Hello, this is Melanie Guralnick, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the May 5th issue of the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The first story is Internet reacts to Steve Simmons' viral moment at Leafs press conference for new GM John Chayka by Dan Balicki. The Toronto Maple Leafs trotted out General Manager John Chayka and Senior Executive Advisor of Hockey Operations Matt Sundin for all to see on Monday, as the team unveiled its new front office leadership team. But as the introductory press conference moved along, one particular question appeared to catch many onlookers and fans on social media off guard. During his turn on the mic, Toronto Sun sports columnist Steve Simmons asked MLSE President and CEO Keith Pelley about the hiring process and decision to go with Chayka, the former GM of the Arizona Coyotes. Simmons asked Pelley about the due diligence done while looking into Chayka, while citing numerous NHL insider sources who had less than stellar things to say about the new general manager. What was the exchange between Simmons and Pelley? Simmons stated that over the past few days, he had been in contact with many prominent people. I think they meant contact. Many prominent people in the NHL, before then dropping a bomb on Pelley. Quote, "Of the 20 people I talked to, one was supportive of John's hiring, and the other 19 thought it was a sham," Simmons said. "How did you come to a different conclusion than what I was able to come to?" After a brief pause, Pelley replied that he must have talked to different people. Simmons, seemingly befuddled by Pelley's response, asked, "That's it?" before laying it down again. "The hockey world today is astounded by this announcement," Simmons said, to which Pelley replied, "Okay." When asked for his final response, Pelley reiterated that the organization had done deep due diligence before hiring Chayka, and then moved on. Why is Chayka a controversial pick for GM? Chayka left the Coyotes under controversial circumstances in July 2020 and was suspended for a year for conduct detrimental to the league and game. The team also was docked 2 high draft picks after hosting a private scouting combine for prospects, which is forbidden by the NHL. What is social media saying? The clip from the press conference quickly went viral, with Simmons and Chayka becoming big trending topics online. Many users on social media backed Simmons for posing a tough question in a scenario where such queries usually aren't seen. Good for Simmons. I'm not a fan of his by any stretch of the imagination. But he asked the question that 75% of this fan base was thinking. Why hire him when no one in this league respects Chayka? One user posted on X. Another, "This was insane. Wow. Steve Simmons coming in with heat. 4Ts. Another user wrote. Quote, "Steve Simmons from the top rope with the question he asked during the Leafs press conference introducing Matt Sundin and John Chayka," a third user wrote on X. One golf fan pointed out that in his sport, you would never hear the type of question that Simmons asked. Quote, "Steve Simmons just scorched Pelley for his hiring of new GM John Chayka. Name one person in golf media who would do this." Another user shared a story that Simmons recently reported, a story he had been told about Chayka's office in Arizona. He had 6 computer terminals on his desk. 5 of them didn't work, Simmons said during his appearance on Off the Roster. John Gambardaro, a sports radio host in Arizona, backed Simmons' statement about Chayka and called the GM a total fraud. On Reddit, users generally backed Simmons' question, a rarity given the columnist's critique of the team over the years. Quote, "I don't like Steve, But this was needed. Pelly is an idiot, and other than Sundin being involved, I don't know how this helps the team. One user wrote. Another joked they will never forgive Pelly for creating a situation where I agree with Steve Simmons. Others were quick to note the seemingly forgotten third man up on the stage. Matt's having war flashbacks after that, LOL, one person joked. There is a picture of MLSE President and CEO Keith Pelly. He's speaking at a press conference introducing the new GM, John Chayka. So they're sitting at a table that has a blue tablecloth on it and a white leaf in the very middle. And he's sitting in front of a microphone looking down at a piece of paper. He's got a bottle of water with him. He's an older guy with kind of grayish hair, and he's got on some reading glasses and a funky looking tie. And then next to him is who I believe is John Chayka. He's a young looking guy, not too young, brown hair, brown eyes, and very fit. And he's sitting in front of a a microphone too. And the background, it says Rogers in red, and there are white maple leaves that say Toronto Maple Leafs on a blue background. Photo courtesy of Getty Images. That story was Internet Reacts to Steve Simmons' Viral Moment at Leafs Press Conference for new GM John Chayka by Dan Balicki. The next story is Monster Ontario moms Becky Hamber and Brandy Cooney guilty of murder and tortuous child abuse by Michelle Mandel. The monster mothers will remain in the prison they deserve for at least the next 2 decades, caged as they caged those poor boys in their care. In the briefest of pronouncements after a marathon trial that covered months of horrific testimony, Superior Court Justice Clayton Conlon convicted spouses Becky Hamber and Brandy Cooney of first-degree murder in the death of the emaciated 12-year-old boy they had planned to adopt. Conlon also convicted the women on 3 counts involving the boy's younger brother: unlawful confinement, assault with a weapon by the use of zip ties, and failing to provide the necessities of life. Both Ms. Clooney and Ms. Hamber are found guilty on all counts, Clayton said, summarizing his 300-page ruling that was released after he left the Milton courtroom, and the 2 moms were back in handcuffs and on their way to their automatic life sentences with no chance of parole for 25 years. Let them rot there for an actual lifetime for what they did to 2 innocent brothers who thought they were being taken to their, quote, forever home in 2017. What the judge said. 5 years later, they'd been pulled from school, confined in zip-tied wetsuits, and sometimes zip-tied helmets, and locked in their rooms like prisoners, denied food, and forced to perform endless stair climbs and other, quote, exercise as punishment, even as the oldest child was wasting away to skin and bones. In his written reasons, Conlon called it an, quote, overwhelming case of child abuse and murder, where the boys were treated like babies and prisoners inside their own home. I am sure that the accused intended to kill L. The electronic evidence is overwhelming in this regard. The accused loathed and hated their son. They resented him. They were tired of dealing with him. They relegated him to the basement and locked him up for much of the last 2 years or so of his life, Conlon said. They persisted with their forcible confinement of L, and with their isolation of him from everything and everyone, including his own little brother, and with their failure to provide him with adequate food and with required medical attention, all even though they saw what their actions and inactions were doing to the boy, causing him to waste away into nothing. That persistence demonstrates an intention to kill the boy. Hamber, 46, and Cooney, 44, had pleaded not guilty to all charges, insisting the child was suffering from an untreated eating disorder. How the boy was found. The lifeless boy, his name covered by a court-ordered publication ban and identified only as L, was found hypothermic in a soaking wet wetsuit in the barren basement of the couple's Burlington home 4 days before Christmas 2022. He weighed the same as he had as a 6-year-old. At the time of his death, L, the same boy who used to smile for the camera and play outside in front of the home, was cachectic. He was in an emaciated state. The first responders had trouble understanding how the small and razor-thin boy lying on the floor in the basement room was really 12 years old. The judge wrote. His younger brother, Jay, was taken away from the moms by Child Protective Services and eventually reunited with his birth mother. He was never returned and has had nothing to do with the accused since, although he told his story to this court. He spoke for himself, but also for his big brother. He described years of abuse in that home in Burlington. I believe Jay, Conlin wrote. Judge didn't buy their defense. Both women testified in their own defense, and the judge rejected everything they had to say as worthless and filled with contradictions, inconsistencies, and things lacking in basic common sense. Conlin saw right through their pathetic explanations. Those internet searches about murder and homicide after L died? This court will never be convinced that a parent who loses a child to the effects of some disease or accident or eating disorder, as alleged by these accused, would choose to spend her time grieving that unbearable loss by searching on the internet terminology about homicide. That is especially so when that same parent, Miss Cooney, is busy looking up on the internet how to erase footage on cameras. He didn't believe the boys were nightmare children who caused $60,000 in damages or that L had broken Hamber's arm. He didn't believe L had an eating disorder. He didn't believe either boy was provided with the care he needed. Conlin called it disgraceful the couple didn't seek help for L when he nearly died a month earlier. By withholding urgently needed medical attention for L, and by withholding adequate food from L, the accused caused L severe and chronic malnourishment, and his wretched and weakened physical state that precipitated his death. Tried to erase evidence. Just 3 days later, they were deleting all their texts and videos. Later recovered by police, they paint a picture of loathe and hate by both accused towards the boys, especially towards L, the judge wrote. In endless text messages, he said, they referred to the boys with disgusting names such as douche, barfer, fuckface, loser, they, moron, twat, and it. One recovered 2021 video taken of L is excruciating to watch, Conlin said. He is so thin, it is hard to describe it in words. His bones are visible all down his backside and his upper buttocks. His right arm is the size of a twig. And instead of concern, he said, the mothers used words like loser, dumbass, dick, and gross. The judge then went on to express more compassion than these evil women ever demonstrated. Quote, this court could go on, but for what purpose other than to, in a way, continue to victimize L, Conlin concluded. He should be remembered for more than this. A sentencing date is expected to be set later this month. There is a picture of Becky Hamber and Brandy Cooney. It's undated. It looks like they're at a wedding. It could be their own wedding. I'm not sure. But Becky is wearing a strapless white dress that has rhinestones on it. And her hair is done up nicely with some kind of feather kind of clip in her hair. She's on the heavy side. And then Brandy is wearing a white shirt with a black tie, and she's got on a white vest that has a red carnation boutonniere on it. And she has long, straight brown hair, and they're both smiling. Photo courtesy of Facebook. That story was Monster Ontario moms Becky Hamber and Brandy Cooney, guilty of murder and tortuous child abuse, by Michelle Mandel. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Louise Arbour, a partisan pick and wrong choice for Canada's Governor General, by Brian Lilly. For a position that is supposed to be nonpartisan and represent all Canadians, Louise Arbour was exactly the wrong pick to become Canada's next Governor General. That's not on Madame Arbour, but who I hope serves with grace and dignity while in the job. Botching the pick is completely on Prime Minister Mark Carney. When Arbour's name was first floated in the media, I doubted the reports, thinking there was no way that Carney and his team would be so foolish as to make such a political partisan pick. Turns out they were that foolish, and they're quite impressed with themselves at the same time. Arbour's activism has remained consistent. There is no doubt that Arbour is an accomplished woman who has held high and prestigious positions in Canada and on the world stage. There is also no doubt that she fits the stereotype of a Laurentian elite liberal insider who holds all the right, or make that left, progressive views. From the earliest days of Arbour's legal career at the Law Reform Commission of Canada, a left-wing activist group, through to her time at the Supreme Court and the United Nations, one thing has been consistent: her activism. In Gosselin versus Quebec, a case about welfare rates, Arbour went against traditional jurisprudence and argued in favor of positive rights requiring the state to act. It's the antithesis of our legal tradition, but it is strongly supported by progressive activists. Her time at the United Nations as the High Commissioner for Human Rights was marred by excessive criticism of Israel and comparative silence on countries such as Iran. She was criticized in her post for, quote, an alarming willingness to cater to the world's more repressive regimes. In 2022, Arbour completed a review of sexual misconduct in the military. In an interview with Maclean's, she offered comments seen as dismissive and derogatory, but definitely in keeping with a progressive political viewpoint. If you just recruit white boys who like guns, but don't like women or anyone who doesn't look like them, you'll perpetuate that culture, Arbour said. A bogus representation of Canada. Louise Arbour would be a fantastic pick to be a Liberal Governor General, but as the King's representative in Canada, she's supposed to represent all Canadians, not just the ones that hold her urban and progressive views. Even on the role of the monarchy, Arbour couldn't answer a straight-up question. That, given her new role, should have been an easy and emphatic yes. Do you consider yourself to be a monarchist? A reporter asked. Well, I don't really know what that term is supposed to mean, Arbour replied. I will give you a legal and constitutional answer. I will serve as the representative of the Crown in a constitutional monarchy based on a parliamentary system, in a constitutional arrangement that is very well served Canada, particularly in recent years, and I'm quite convinced that this will continue to be the case. Don't expect her to sing God Save the King too loudly. Look, I'm hardly a monarchy booster, but I didn't just accept the role of Canada's vice-regal. She should try and have a little bit of enthusiasm for the role she's just accepted beyond the big salary, big house, and big travel budget. Arbour is to respond to her critics. Arbour was asked to respond to her critics who see her as too political, too partisan to occupy a role that should represent all Canadians. Quote, I will reach out, not only to those who agree with me, she said. I will reach out to anybody who wishes to engage with me, to debate, to discuss. I will listen. Since she's going to have the job, let's hope that she is successful in reaching out, understanding and embracing all Canadians. As for the PM, he loves talking about upholding Canada's institutions. With this very partisan appointment, he has undermined the role of the Governor General. There is a picture of Prime Minister Mark Carney. He is walking Louise Arbour to announce the new Governor General. This was taken on May 5th of this year. And they're walking down this corridor, and on both sides of them, there are Canadian flags really close together. I would say there's at least 50 of them on each side. And Mark Carney is looking down over at Louise Arbour. She's kind of a bit shorter than him. And he's smiling at her in his suit, and she's wearing just a very simple navy blue top and navy blue pants. She's got short gray hair, and she's looking up at Mark Carney and smiling too. Photo courtesy of Adrian Wild via the Canadian Press. That story was Louise Arbour, a partisan pick and wrong choice for Canada's Governor General, by Brian Lilly. The next story is Maple Leafs win 2026 NHL Draft Lottery. We'll pick first overall, by Terry Koshin. The Maple Leafs are back in business. The Leafs won the NHL Draft Lottery on Tuesday night and will have the first pick overall in the 2026 NHL Draft. Wingers Gavin McKenna and Ivar Stenberg are the top prospects, and either one would slot in nicely on the Leafs' top line. It's a franchise-altering development for the Leafs, fresh off missing the Stanley Cup playoffs for the first time in 10 years. The Leafs, originally slotted fifth, had an 8.5% chance of winning the first pick. I'm extremely happy for the Toronto Maple Leafs fan base, said new Leafs executive Matt Sundin, a former number one pick himself, who represented the club at the lottery. It's great to get the first pick. Great night, great lottery. Past number one picks included Matthews and Clark. The off-season challenges for the new Leafs general manager John Chayka suddenly are not so daunting. It will be the third time the Leafs have had the first pick in the NHL draft. In 2016, they chose Auston Matthews. Could the captain now be convinced to stay considering what just happened? And in 1985, the Leafs chose Wendell Clark first overall. 6 other picks in this year's draft. The Leafs will transfer their first-round pick in 2027 or 2028 to the Boston Bruins as part of the Brandon Carlo trade. The other first-rounder in the next 2 years will go to the Philadelphia Flyers as part of the Scott Lofton trade. Those possibilities could be moot, considering what McKenna or Stenberg would bring. In the other 2026 rounds, the Leafs, as of right now, have 6 picks. Their second-round pick originally was owned by Buffalo and comes to Toronto from Los Angeles via another Lofton trade. The Leafs also have their own picks in the 3rd and 5th rounds. A 4th-round pick, originally belonging to Anaheim, was acquired in the trade with Seattle for Bobby McMahon. A 5th-round pick was acquired from Colorado in the Nicholas Roy trade. A 6th-round pick was acquired from San Jose in the Timothy Liljegren trade in 2024. More to come. There is a picture of Toronto Maple Leafs executive Matt Sundin. He is on a video screen, and it's a really big one, and there's like this very shiny floor in front of it and some like neon lights around it. Let's see. He's just wearing a plain black jacket with some kind of pin on his lapel. He's bald, he's smiling, and behind him there's a graphic that says Toronto Maple Leafs Hockey Club, and it looks like it's glowing. Photo courtesy of Stephen Whyno via AP Photo. That story was Maple Leafs win 2026 NHL Draft Lottery. We'll pick first overall, by Terry Koshin. The next story is Returning blaze at Toronto high-rises resulted from saw on concrete sparks, by Jane Stevenson. Toronto Fire Chief Jim Jessup says the blaze that erupted between two East End condo high-rises for a second time on Monday, the scene of a weeks-long fire in between the building's walls last winter, was caused by a saw creating sparks on the concrete. The investigation has been completed, said Jessup at a Tuesday morning press conference. The fire was caused by workers in the building doing remedial work and repair work and restoration work from the original fire in the unit on the 7th floor. It was caused by sparks from a saw cutting into concrete that caused the 10-test insulation, which is a rigid natural wood fiber, to again catch fire. Jessup told reporters that Toronto Fire responded to 11 Thorncliffe Park Drive and 21 Overlea Boulevard's 3-alarm blaze on Tuesday morning, with 12 trucks and over 100 firefighters, and are still waiting to totally extinguish the blaze without any tenant evacuation necessary on either day. We have been continually monitoring the air in the building for both smoke and carbon monoxide. And because it is safe to do so, we have no intention to disrupting the residents' lives at this point, especially given what they went through at the end of 2025, said the fire chief. I can't even imagine the angst and the questions they have, and the uncertainty, and we're going to do our best today to make sure that we bring as much certainty and honesty as we can. I'm happy to report there were no injuries. 2 building permits were issued by City of Toronto for remedial work. Kamal Gogna, the chief building official and executive director of Toronto Building, told reporters the City of Toronto issued 2 building permits for remedial work as a result of the 2025 fire, but has now ordered all work to stop immediately. The scope of that works includes the removal of the 10-test material that the chief described, as well as filling the gap with fire-stopping material, along with some restoration of concrete work that is necessary, said Gogna. He added Toronto Building has issued an order to the property management requiring their engineer to produce a construction management plan prior to any work resuming on the site. Work will not continue until we're satisfied, that the city is satisfied, that remedial work can continue in a safe manner, said Gogna. He said he was aware that saws were being used to cut concrete in the remedial work, but there was a plan in place to address the situation with respect to the methodology that was going to be used. Gogna said 10-test installation is commonly used to separate 2 structures in the construction industry. At the time when these buildings were constructed, there were no code deficiencies identified, he said. Roughly 400 units were evacuated after the November 27, 2025 fire, which continued for more than 2 weeks, and most residents were not allowed back into their units until January 4th. Jessup said at the time it was the most complex situation he had ever seen in his 30 years on the job, because of the difficulty crews had accessing the smoldering insulation. There is a picture of a building that is about 8 stories. It's on the corner, so it's taken looking at the corner portion where you'd enter. And there's some snow on the ground. There's like a paramedics fire truck parked next to it. And the caption says, "A fire truck at the scene of a blaze in Thorncliffe Park last year." I don't see the blaze, but there is a little bit of black on the front column entrance. It's very little. I don't know if that had anything to do with the blaze, but you can't see it in this picture. Photo courtesy of Jack Boland via the Toronto Sun. That story was Returning Blaze at Toronto High Rises Resulted from Saw on Concrete Sparks by Jane Stevenson. The next story is Hank Effect Sees Toronto Police Scrubbing Beloved Crest from 14 Division by Joe Warmington. First, the seagull was killed on the Blue Jays baseball diamond, and now the history of Toronto police arresting an iconic New York Yankee for hitting the bird with a ball is being scrubbed too. When you wear that police uniform in the big city of Toronto, there is an adage that while things may get under your skin, you don't ever let the bastards grind you down. True to that saying, even when things pile up on Toronto police, they just keep plugging away. Bomb threats at 16 schools, fires, stabbings, gas leaks, car crashes, and a complicated and mysterious murder probe of a guy shot 5 times in a park with no known motive. This was one busy day for Toronto police. Of course, just about every day is. But when you have threats on children, a man shot to death in a park while walking his dog, people stabbed, a fire in an apartment building, and people worried about an explosion because of leaking gas, heads must have been spinning. In 14th Division, they have an official Latin saying and crest that they use to help them get through each difficult day. Quote, Non intelligentini stet carborundum. Roughly translated to, Don't let the bastards grind you down, in English. Memo calls for crest to be removed. The patch crest is equally iconic, a caricature of a seagull holding a baseball bat. But this one survived and has been a beloved staple in 14th Division since 1983. Until now. Word leaked out of the West End Division Tuesday that the slogan and logo are no more. A memo went out that said after almost 38 years of being the division's adopted, unofficial motto, they have been ordered to remove it from the station. It has come to our attention that the following Latin motto has been mentioned in the new book written by former TPS inspector Hank Idsinga. The memo addressed to 14th Division said. It added that since there has been controversy surrounding some of the other comments made in the book, quote, we in 14th Division do not want to be part of it. Effective immediately, this logo must be removed from all stations, bulletins, email signatures, etc. History dates to arrest of Dave Winfield. This is what you might call the Hank effect. Fallout from the retired Hank Idsinga's book, The High Road, Confessions of a Homicide Cop, which has led to much reaction to recollections of his 34 years on the job, including accusations of anti-Semitism and racism among the senior ranks among other alleged indiscretions. On page 34, Insignia writes, the seagull on the crest was a nod to an incident in 1983 when New York Yankee Dave Winfield struck and killed a bird while warming up for a game against the Toronto Blue Jays at Exhibition Stadium. Officers from 14th Division arrested Winfield after the game and charged him with cruelty to animals. The case was dropped by the Crown. On the meaning of the Latin motto, Idsinga wrote that I don't think I began to appreciate what that really meant until my later years, referring to the grind of being a police officer before ending the book by saying he finally figured out who they are referring to. Constable Laura Brabant told the Toronto Sun that the unit commander at 14th Division asked for the logo to be removed. It was still showing up on some stationery. The wording was in Latin, so it wasn't clear what it meant, but it relates to the attached story from the 1980s. An internal 14th Division document sent by police rehashes the history of the legendary Constable Wayne Hartery, who laid the charge against Winfield, and how the crest became 14th Division's mascot that was used on baseball caps, coffee mugs, and t-shirts. But that's not allowed anymore. Hank effect has had mostly positive impact. While the Hank effect has had a positive impact on how police respond to violence toward the Jewish community, has led to Chief Myron Demke saying that any racist behavior from police is unacceptable, and the Toronto Police Services Board probing the claims. My feeling as a quasi-Toronto police historian and documenter is they should pause the cancellation of this. Don't erase history. Don't make Idsinga persona non grata, and instead embrace the legendary detective and treat what he shined a light on as something that everybody can learn from. Scrubbing his existence may scare others from blowing the whistle on suspected wrongdoing, and it won't solve any of the problems. You can't get better if you sweep away the things that need to be improved. But history is history. And while there are understandably some hard feelings about Idsinga's book, he talks about how most of the people he served with are fantastic, and that he never intended for the book to be a hit piece. The public needs to know that too. The cops, from recruits to veteran constables, to the chief and the rest of the senior ranks, may not always feel the love, but they need to know it's still there. There's no need to overreact or overcompensate to every critic. I say bring back the seagull. It's a great logo and a great motto. There is a picture of the cover of Hank Idsinga's book called The High Road, Confessions of a Homicide Cop. So it says in white letters his name and the name of the book in white, and then underneath the Confessions of a Homicide Cop is yellow. And it's superimposed over a picture at night of Toronto, or at least at nightfall. And there's lots of like thunder-looking clouds in the sky, and you can see all the high-rises lit up at night. Photo courtesy of Simon & Schuster via Amazon. There is also the picture of the Toronto Sun. It's the cover. It's volume 2, number 196 from August 5th, 1983. The weather is overcast with a high of 28 degrees Celsius. It's 25 cents. And the big headline in red, foul ball, spelled F-O-W-L, Yankee outfielder charged with cruelty. And you can see the Blue Jay player standing, oh my gosh, I think it's the actual seagull that's lying dead on the ground. He's holding this towel like he's going to pick it up with that or cover it. And he's in his baseball uniform. Photo courtesy of Toronto Sun Files. There is also a picture of the unofficial crest of Toronto Police 14 Division, and it's overall red, and it's like a shield or a crest, and in blue writing it's X1V LEGIO, and then under that is a seagull holding a baseball bat, but he looks really worried. That's his expression. And then it says the Latin words underneath. Photo by Toronto Sun. That story was Hank Effect sees Toronto Police scrubbing beloved crest from 14 Division by Joe Warmington. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Questions Persist in Kidnapping or Potential Slaying of Elnaz Hashtamiri by Brad Hunter. There were always nagging questions about the brazen abduction of Elnaz Hashmatiri. Right out of the gate on that snowy night in January 2022. Some of the answers became self-evident, released by cops or unveiled in a Bari courtroom on Monday. Other sidebars aren't so clear, and we may now never know them unless the man accused of being the mastermind behind her abduction in the middle of the night and an earlier beatdown flips on his cronies. Hiding out with relatives. Elnaz Hashtamiri was 37 when she was abducted by 3 masked people equipped with police gear on January 12, 2022. She was hiding from her former boyfriend, Mohamed Lilo, 38, of Montreal. OPP detectives launched an unprecedented hunt for Haj Damiri, but found no trace of her. She is believed to have been murdered. On Monday, Lilo pleaded guilty to conspiracy to kidnap Haj Damiri, in exchange for the first-degree murder charges against him being dropped by the Crown. The Crown and defense offered up a joint proposal for a 4-year sentence. Last June, he was also convicted of aggravated assault in a botched kidnapping attempt and attack on Haj Damiri. But here's where it gets complicated. Over time, OPP and York Regional Police detectives arrested 11 people. When Lilo was arrested, cops described it as a domestic situation that came off the rails. Haj Damiri had dumped Lilo several months before, and court heard he was jealous and angry, and obsessed enough to have his ex-girlfriend followed. Overkill for a domestic beef. Cops say he enlisted 10 men and women for the botched kidnapping and assault in the basement garage of a Richmond Hill condo and later kidnapping from Wasaga Beach. But as I pointed out at a YRP news conference on the Richmond Hill attack, 10 people seemed like overkill for what had been framed as a matter of the heart. Well, the news conference ended without answers. For Lilo, there may have been some animosity toward his ex-girlfriend, but it appeared that something deeper, more sinister, was unfolding. As I first reported in the Toronto Sun, 2 of the alleged thugs who attacked Haj Damiri a month before she was abducted, Harshdeep Binner, 23, and Riazad Singh, 22, were neck-deep in an Edmonton stolen truck ring. The group targeted Ford F-150 trucks that sold for around $48,000 retail at the time. Organized crime? You bet. Oddly, Lilo was in the shipping business, providing ocean-going containers. Remember the pricey vehicles being boosted off our streets? The scam was that the hot vehicles were shipped to the Irish mob-controlled port of Montreal. Then it was bon voyage. Most of the vehicles were shipped to Dubai, UAE, and other Middle Eastern destinations. It's not a domestic incident. That's not what it's about, one law enforcement source alleged. It's about stolen trucks being shipped to Africa and the Middle East by a criminal gang. Now, the Sun's initial suspicions have been confirmed. Did Elnaz Haj Damiri know too much? Anything written here is conjecture, but the stolen vehicle angle is the front runner as the motive for her disappearance and murder. Was Elnaz murdered, and if so, who ordered the killing? Haj Damiri worked for Lilo, and his business was facilitating the export of stolen vehicles. In court on Monday, it emerged that Lilo's associates were uncomfortable when the couple split. She was viewed as a liability and someone who needed to be taken off the board. His cronies feared she was going to go to the cops and turn canary, and they were willing to cough up an estimated $50,000 to watch her. The question now is, who are these people? Will they be brought to justice? And did Lilo make a deal to rat them out? As I said, $50,000 is a lot of money to blow on a broken heart. There is an undated picture of Elnaz Haj Damiri. She is standing in front of Niagara Falls, I believe. It's kind of out of focus. She's wearing a cute blue and white striped shirt that's off the shoulder. She's holding her iPhone. She's got long brown hair that's kind of halfway pulled back, and she's wearing blue metallic sunglasses and smiling with really pretty lipstick. Photo courtesy of OPP. That story was Questions Persist in Kidnapping or Potential Slaying of Elnaz Haj Damiri by Brad Hunter. The next story is Greater Toronto Area Gas Prices Set for Big Jump on Wednesday by Spiro Papakoski. Get ready for more pain at the pump. The cost of gasoline to fuel your vehicle is expected to jump to nearly $2 a liter across the Greater Toronto Area on Wednesday. According to fuel prediction website Gas Wizard, the price of gasoline will rise to 195.9 cents, an increase of 7 cents over Tuesday. For drivers who pump premium fuel, expect to pay on average nearly $2.26 a liter on Wednesday. Upward trek for gas prices. Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, said gas prices are set to resume their upward trek this week. The former Liberal member of Parliament said Eastern Canada will see an average gas price hike of 8 cents on Wednesday, while Western Canada will see a 5-cent jump. Drivers who filled up on diesel are expected to pay an average of nearly $2.10 on Wednesday. McTeague told Newstalk 1010 on Tuesday that we're knocking on the $2 a liter door. Prices were last this high in May 2022. Gas prices have not reached this level since May 2022, according to Statistics Canada, following COVID-19 related supply chain disruptions over increasing demand. Since the conflict in Iran began in late February by the United States and Israel, gas prices have steadily climbed following the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, a major shipping gateway for oil tankers in the Middle East, producing uncertainty in energy markets. According to McTeague, if the strait is opened, it will not immediately help fill a 1.2 billion barrel deficit for oil in the short term. In addition, rising pump costs are also due to higher demand in warmer months and the switch to more expensive summer fuel blends. There is a picture of a gas station where you could see about a dozen gas pumps. There are no cars here. The gas pumps are red, white, and blue. And I don't know the name of this gas station, but there is a McDonald's across the street. Photo by Jack Bolland via the Toronto Sun. That story was Greater Toronto Area Gas Prices Set for Big Jump on Wednesday by Spiro Papakoski. The next story is Thieves Make Off with ATM After Excavator Used in Ajax Bank Heist by Jane Stevenson. Bank robbers dug into their bag of tricks with Durham Regional Police investigating the use of an excavator during a break-and-enter early Monday morning at a bank in Ajax. Cops said that about 4:20 a.m., they responded to a commercial alarm at a TD Bank branch at 83 Williamson Drive, near Westney Road in the city's north end. Officers arrived on the scene and found a parked and unoccupied excavator near an area of the building that had extensive damage. Cops are seeking video footage from area. At least one ATM was stolen from the damaged area of the bank, and all of the suspects fled from the area before police arrived. Police are asking anyone who is in the area between 3:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. or has cell phone, dash cam, or other surveillance footage related to the incident to contact detectives with the West Crime Team at 1-888-579-1520, extension 1905. Anonymous information can also be sent to Durham Regional Crime Stoppers at 1-800-222-8477 or online at durhamregionalcrimestoppers.ca. Monday's heist was certainly not the first time heavy construction equipment had been used to rob a bank in the GTA. Latest heist involving construction equipment. In Etobicoke in November 2025, a backhoe was used to breach a wall at a bank near Rexdale Boulevard and Islington Avenue. A few months earlier, in June 2025, There was a failed attempt to breach a Scarborough bank at Port Union and Lawson Roads, with an excavator left behind in the wreckage. In March 2025, an excavator was also used to damage a wall and steal an ATM at a Woodbridge bank. And on December 31, 2024, a TD Bank at the corner of Bathurst Street and Lawrence Avenue was damaged after an excavator was used to steal an ATM. There is a picture of the TD Bank at the corner of Bathurst Street and Lawrence Avenue. There is a yellow Crime Stopper tape in front of it, and you could see the excavator that's left there, and all of the windows were broken and glasses everywhere. There's a couple guys in construction vests that are cleaning it up. It looks like it's in kind of like a mall. There's a kids zone and some other large kind of store to the left of the TD Bank. Photo courtesy of Jack Boland with the Toronto Sun. That story was Thieves Make Off with ATM After Excavator Used in Ajax Bank Heist by Jane Stevenson. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Sun on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The next story is Raptors coach Darko Rajokovic on what's next for Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, and more, by Ryan Wolstadt. Darko Rajokovic's third season coaching the Toronto Raptors was easily his best yet, but he's already looking ahead to what's next for his club. I already have 40 to 50% of my first team meeting ready for next year. Probably like 2-3 months ago, I started already planning the summer, planning the next season, starting making a bunch of notes, said the 10th coach in franchise history, who is anything if not prepared. That's an ongoing process. That never stops. Obviously, we're going to have a couple of weeks over here off. It really never stops. It's constantly finding ways how to improve, how to get better, how to help players, how to stay in their corner. Rajokovic said he'll work with his mental performance coach to help him improve as a leader. He should pass Lenny Wilkens for fourth onto Toronto's all-time wins list early next season, and has already tied Sam Mitchell's 3 playoff victories, trailing only Nick Nurse, Dwayne Casey, and Wilkens. Expect a contract extension this summer. Here are some takeaways from Rajokovic's season-ending media availability, which came 2 days after Toronto lost Game 7 in Cleveland. On Scottie Barnes being unique. We put him in post-ups, we use him in pick and rolls, as a handler, as a screener. He's amazing in transition. There are a lot of things he's doing. Just polishing those things and getting better in those things, getting better conditioned, getting his body in even better shape is going to help with his overall game. Rajokovic said after Barnes emerged as one of the 15 to 20 best players in the sport and one of its best 5 defenders. For this summer specifically, we're going to focus more on his skill development, on his ability to come up with a couple moves on the dribble to be an even better finisher at the rim and continue working on his shooting as well. Pretty much his overall game needs to take another jump. Rajokovic believes Barnes can sustain the level of play he displayed in the postseason throughout a long regular season. On building around Barnes. Scottie's a player that he just embraces any time of player around him. He's trying to maximize guys around him. He's going to try to make the right play every time all around the court, Rajokovic said. He's not playing agenda basketball. That's what's very special for him. He's just trying to make the right play. When you look at the best players around the league, the best players to play this game, they have those traits. They have the traits of making the right play more often. On how to improve the team. I think we did a good job this year with defense and the way we're guarding the ball. I think us having more paint protection is something we can take a look at. I think continuing to develop offensive side of the ball with individual improvement of players, of their shooting, is going to be very, very important for us. So those are the main things for us to focus on, he said. Rajakovic wants Jacoby Walter to work on getting stronger and becoming better at finishing inside. Says Jamal Sheed also needs to become good at scoring in the paint, and says the team still believes in Grady Dick, but wants to see him get better as a defender and shooter. No easy task. If Sandro Mamakulashvili resigns, or re-signs as it were, the plans are to help him work on his body and transition to more of a power forward and occasional small forward, instead of a backup center. Mamakulashvili said a day earlier he wants to improve his conditioning and body. On balancing Ingram. It has been noted that while Brandon Ingram led the team in scoring and bailed out a weak offense many times throughout the regular season, the team was also at its best when it moved the ball and played quickly. Those aren't Ingram's strengths, but Rajakovic thinks they can be. For me, this past season was about getting back to playing and being healthy to sustain the whole season. But when I look at BI and what's coming over the next 5.5 months is taking his game to the next level. Physically, the pace that we're running with, the ability to run in transition, Rajakovic said. When I look at BI, I see a player that can rebound the ball on the defensive end and push the ball in transition. I need to put the ball in his hands more in the half court early in the shot clock, so he can make the plays for his teammates, because with his size and his skill, he's very capable of creating his own shot and also find his teammates. So, there is a lot of stuff that I'm really excited about when I look at his summer and when I look at what BI can do for us going forward. That's all the time we have for this story, which was Raptors coach Darko Rajakovic on what's next for Scottie Barnes, Brandon Ingram, and more, by Ryan Wolstad. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the May 5th issue of the Toronto Sun. Your reader has been Melanie Guralnick. Thank you for listening.